Well, after 7 years together, you'd think Eugene and Jane had it all figured out. When the ball dropped that New Year's, Jane made a wish, not for jewelry or some fancy trip, but for a patch of earth to call their own. A place to build a home from the ground up. And you know what? For a little while it seemed like the universe was actually listening. Almost like magic, a perfect plot of land popped up in the listings, and soon after, they stumbled upon a crew of builders who really knew their stuff. With a nest egg they'd been building for ages, and a little help from the bank, their dream suddenly had a foundation. They kept their rented place in the city, making weekend pilgrimages to the construction site to watch their future take shape. Now, they say a big project like this can either glue a couple together or be the very thing that tears them apart. Guess which way this story goes. Little disagreements, like tiny cracks in a wall, started to appear. You see, Jane had a crystal-clear picture of her dream house, and, well, Eugene had his own. Frankly, the man just wouldn't bend. He saw compromise as a weakness, and whenever Jane voiced a different opinion, he'd just shut down, leaving her feeling small and unheard. He wasn't the type to offer a comforting word, much less an apology. He was a man of principle, you see, which is really just a nice way of saying he was stubborn as a mule. Somehow, through a minefield of arguments and silent treatments, they managed to get the house finished and were just about moved in. One afternoon, while running errands in the city, they bumped into an old army buddy of Eugene's, a guy named Alex. Total coincidence. Alex was just passing through from out of town for a couple of days. After Eugene made the introductions, Jane found herself looking at this stranger with a flicker of genuine interest. As they chatted, it came out that Alex was freshly separated from his wife and was taking a sort of impromptu vacation to clear his head. "Man, that's rough," Eugene said with a sympathetic nod. Then a light bulb went off. "Listen, speaking of new starts, Jane and I just finished building our place. We're having a housewarming bash. You should totally come. We'll even have some of Jane's single friends there," he added with a wink. On the big night, the new house was buzzing with about a dozen of their closest friends and colleagues. Alex, true to his word, showed up right on time. In fact, a little early. Jane had been on her feet since morning, a whirlwind in the kitchen preparing a feast for their guests. She'd asked Eugene for a hand, but his contribution was limited to dragging the big table and grill out onto the lawn before declaring he was wiped out. He promptly went upstairs to nap before the party, leaving his wife to drown in a sea of last-minute tasks. Oh, that stung. The familiar chill of his indifference settled over her once again. And that's when Alex appeared, like an answer to a prayer she didn't even know she'd made. He jumped right in, helping her arrange platters and taking over tasks without even being asked. With some time to spare before the other guests arrived, they found themselves sitting in the kitchen, just talking. He had this way of looking at her, a genuine admiration in his eyes, as he showered her with compliments, commenting on what a beautiful home she'd made, how graceful she was, how easy she was to talk to. She could feel a blush creeping up her neck. Honestly, the attention was intoxicating, especially since her own husband treated all her efforts as something he was simply entitled to. Once everyone arrived, the party moved to the courtyard. Laughter and conversation flowed around the long table as friends toasted the happy couple and their stunning new home. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed freely, Alex somehow shifted from being the new guy to the absolute soul of the party. He had a story for everything, a joke for everyone. Jane watched him, a dreamy look returning to her eyes, and she couldn't help but draw a comparison to her own husband. It wasn't a flattering one. By now, the party was in full swing. Music pulsed, voices were loud, and everyone was feeling loose and happy. Seeing the platters getting bare, but the night being far from over, Eugene decided he'd fire up the grill again. He called out for his wife to bring him the supplies from the kitchen, but there was no answer. Turning to the crowd, he scanned the faces, but couldn't spot her among them. He asked a friend who vaguely recalled seeing her head inside the house. He must have gone to lie down, Eugene thought, heading for the front door. He tiptoed through the house, not wanting to wake his exhausted wife. As he approached their bedroom door, he heard a sound, a low murmur. Without a second thought, he pushed the door open, and the world screeched to a halt. There, on their brand-new marital bed, was his old friend Alex with his wife, Jane. They were tangled together in a way that left nothing to the imagination. From their slow, clumsy reactions, it was painfully obvious they were both well past drunk. The next few moments were a red haze for Eugene. A primal roar tore from his throat as he lunged at Alex. Jane was screaming somewhere in the background, a sharp, terrified sound. Suddenly, other people were there, a guest pulling the two men apart. It took forever for the fury to drain from Eugene, leaving him shaking while his wife sobbed in a corner. In the chaos, her former comrade slipped out of the ruined party and vanished into the night. A couple of close friends insisted on staying, not wanting to leave the fractured couple alone. Eventually, a tear-streaked Jane left with them, while Eugene remained in the house, a king in a castle of broken dreams. The rage was gone, replaced by a hollow, crushing weight in his chest. Sitting on the couch, he just couldn't wrap his head around it. How? He replayed the last few days, the last few hours, every missed sign, every glance he hadn't paid attention to. The blame began to shift, turning inward. "How could I have been so damn blind?" he muttered to the empty room. Eugene filed for divorce. He couldn't stand to be in the new house for a second longer. Having no happy memories to cling to, every wall, every room, only screamed of that one disastrous evening. The house and the plot of land had to be sold. The profits split down the middle like everything else. When the whole story came out, their mutual friends sided with Eugene. In their minds, treason was the ultimate betrayal, a line that simply could not be crossed. Jane tried to explain herself, blaming the constant fighting and her husband's coldness. But to her friends, it just sounded like a weak excuse. In the end, she was left with no husband and no close friends. And as for Alex, there was never any chance of anything real there. He had come to town for a bit of rest and relaxation, and boy did he get it. He went back to his city as easily as he came, making just one little stop along the way, the local emergency room.